We're in preview mode again, folks. It's the British Grand Prix coming up this weekend, and it's probably going to rain a bit.
Well, I don't know. It's looking a bit shaky. It's the old weather. We've had it hot. We've had it a bit wet. And now who knows what's coming up with Silverstone. It's going to be it feels like a classic British weekend. It could be delightfully warm and sunny. You also will need an umbrella at 27 degrees. I think that's how it's going to be.
Yeah, that's the way it goes. And we, we've not mentioned it much, but the UK's experienced some hot weather lately. You wouldn't have guessed by any of our comments. But yeah, it's changed. It's going to change just in time for the British GP. And I'm pleased about that because it feels proper and right for Silverstone to have every single season within a day. And that's why we love it.
Thunderstorms, actually. Bring on the thunder.
Oh, right. AC/DC. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think it's telling. The older we get, the more we seem to discuss weather. I'm spotting that as a trend.
It's a rite of passage about living on this stupid little island.
First 100 episodes, I doubt we've mentioned the weather once. Now it seems like we mention it at the start of every single episode, and everyone around the world listening is going, will you shut up and move on and talk about F1?
I've blocked out the first 100 episodes from my mind, so we didn't know.
Smart man. Do you know we're going to Austin later this year?
Are we?
Yes, unbelievably.
Speaking of weather.
Of life. Yes. Tickets for our live show in Austin, Texas are now on general sale. We'll, of course, be recording our USGP preview show that night, but that's not all. On top of that, we'll play a few games. You have the opportunity to meet us, if that's a positive, have a drink with us, chat with other fellow F1 fans. We've had our biggest Patreon pre-sale yet, and we'd love for you to join us there as well. So if you want to do so, the link is in the description, and it's also accessible on our social media channels as well. But easiest place to go, the description of this episode. But as ever, if you have any additional questions, just get in contact with us at podcast@latebreaking.co.uk. British GP preview tonight, lads.
You said that in a British way as well.
British.
British.
No T, just a comma.
How many T's are there in British?
No T's.
Apart from it's all T's here. Round 12, all T's.
As in cuppers. As in cuppers.
Oh, sorry, that was so... Okay, sure.
Get with the plan, Sam. Come on.
Come on, mate.
Oh, it's my fault. This is my fault, yeah.
It's round 12 of the 2025 season, which means after this race, believe it or not, we will be 50% of the way through this season. Silverstone, location of the first ever Grand Prix back in 1950, the first ever F1 championship race. 18 corners, many recognisable names. We've got Copse, the Maggots and Beggots complex. And it's a high-speed circuit, so plenty of opportunity to overtake. Turn 6, Brooklands, and turn 15, Stowe, probably your best bets. The defending champion here is the most successful driver here of all time, Lewis Hamilton, going for an unprecedented 10th win at this circuit. But we're going to start our preview with another Brit who won the last race, that being Lando Norris. Sam, would you make Lando Norris the favourite?
I'm not as confident as I was about Austria as I am here about Silverstone. There's a lot more variables going on. It's not the ridiculous heat that we saw in Austria. And whilst it has been warm here this week, the heat wave has moved on, and we are returning to somewhat standard British time summer weather. And that means a few clouds, there's a few chances of rain to pour itself onto the racetrack. And you saw just how bizarre the form was last time out here in Silverstone, where actually Lewis Hamilton went on to win that Grand Prix. You saw how Mercedes started well, then McLaren came through, then Mercedes came back, and then Max Verstappen popped out of nowhere. And this is because we had such a fluctuating change in weather. We had a sprinkling of rain, and then it will dry up, and then it will get a little bit cooler, and then it got hotter again. And I do think that the pecking order is going to be so much closer this time than we had in Austria. I think we'll be very much back to similar levels that we saw maybe in the likes of Japan, that kind of closeness between the teams. I think it will be a proper scrap between the teams. And I do think if we are going to have properly changeable conditions, and actually, sorry, Lando Norris and Lando Norris fans, I think that lowers his chance of being the favourite even further. He is struggled a little bit to judge weather conditions in previous races. You'll remember his first race in Russia, where he looked like he might get his first race win. Didn't get a plan. Brazil, when Max Verstappen went from last to first, of course, he really struggled there as well, falling off the track a number of times. It's just a few occasions where he hasn't thrived. And I do think if you're going to see some chaos and a surprise result, a changeable condition Silverstone could be where we see that happen. It might be that chance, because obviously Lewis Hamilton on a streak currently, I think, of 13 podiums here at Silverstone. I know that there are a lot of Ferrari fans and a lot of Lewis Hamilton fans who are kind of holding a knife up to Ferrari social media accounts at the moment, being like, don't you dare break that streak. Don't you dare. I'm actually, they're all threatening to burn pasta or something in retaliation if it doesn't go to plan. But it ain't looking good, folks. It ain't looking good. So maybe if we do get some mixed conditions, the likes of Hamilton, Leclerc, Russell will be those kind of people that will be able to disrupt the McLaren dominance that we saw in Austria.
Harry, would you make Norris the favourite?
Based on Austria, yes, I will. But I'm with Sam. I think it's not as straightforward here as it was in Austria for McLaren. I think the circuit will still suit the McLaren. The McLaren goes well everywhere, and we saw a couple of years ago now. But when they first started to climb their way back up to the front, this was the race that sort of kicked things off for them in 2023. I think generally this car goes well around this circuit. Now, the thing that's going to hold them up, not hold them up, but the thing that's going to get in their way are the mixed conditions and the cooler weather, because I think the cooler weather that we have in the UK versus Austria will bring the likes of Mercedes back into play. If there's mixed conditions, count out Max Verstappen at your peril. Count out Lewis Hamilton at your peril in mixed conditions, as we saw last year. So, yes, I think Norris and McLaren are the favourites, and Piastri is going to be very close between those two wherever we go, I think, this year. But I don't think it's going to be as straightforward for McLaren as it was in Austria. I think it's going to be a tighter competition with the likes of Mercedes and Verstappen and maybe even Ferrari. In which case, it could be a tougher weekend for them. But yes, I think you've got to say that based on what we've seen, McLaren should be the favourites going into this one.
The bookmakers make this an absolute dead heat between Norris and Piastri. And you can understand why, because we're 11 races into this season so far. Piastri has beaten Lando Norris 6 times. Norris has beaten Piastri 5 times. So it's about as close as it can possibly be. The positive for Lando Norris is that this stretch of races that we've just had is much more encouraging than what we had earlier on in the season. So the last 5 races, Lando Norris is the only driver to have won multiple times. And if you were to look at, say, the last 4 races, I think Norris has maybe been the quicker driver in 3 of them. Since Miami, Lando Norris is beating Oscar Piastri by a grand total of 1 point in the championship, which, when you think that Norris has had a DNF in that, it's pretty good going based on, again, where he was. Having said all of that, I don't think it's a guarantee that he's the favourite, and I think it will be close between the two of them. Piastri was absolutely a match for Lando Norris here last year, and he got seriously unlucky in that Grand Prix. And whilst Lando Norris has got 7 wins to his name in his career, the same number as Piastri at this moment in time, the difference between the two, as of yet, is Norris hasn't been able to string together wins. He hasn't been able to string together results in the same way that Piastri did when he won 3 races in a row earlier in the season. I was actually looking at this as a trend, which I thought was really interesting. Norris's wins this year. He's won Australia, he's won Monaco, and he's won the Miami Sprint, and obviously won last time out in Austria as well. He wins Australia. Who wins China? Piastri.
Yeah, his teammate.
He wins the Miami Sprint. Who goes on to win the main race?
His teammate. Yeah.
Piastri. And he wins Monaco, of course. The next race after that was the Spanish GP, won by Oscar Piastri. Piastri's bounced back every time so far. That's something that Norris needs to address. Sam, I was having a look through some of the most recent races and trying to work out whether McLaren would be completely dominant here or somewhat dominant or not dominant at all. And I kind of, and maybe you disagree with this, but I said Miami and Austria, very dominant, like extremely dominant. Spain and Monaco, dominant, but not to the same level. And then Imola and Canada, free for all, competitive, but not dominant. What connects them? Because I can't find anything.
They're all racetracks, mate. That's how it works. Cars go around them in circles. I think what you got in Miami and what you see in Austria are heavy traction zones. And they are both very, very warm. And I think these are two things that complement McLaren massively. They keep their tyres alive and they keep them in the temperature range very well. Both drivers do. And you saw how, I say easy, that I'm downplaying it there, but how easily Oscar Piastri was staying behind Lando Norris through pretty much every corner, lap after lap at Austria, and how well Lando Norris was able to start picking up speed later on in the Miami GP after he finally passed the likes of Max Verstappen, etc. He was really able to start capitalizing on the longevity that the McLaren could look after their tyres. And I think that's because Canada doesn't really have one full, really intense traction zone. It has the hairpin towards the end of the lap, but even then, it's quite a flowing hairpin that you look at. And when you look at the likes of Miami, that Mickey Mouse section towards the end of the lap, Austria at turn 3 has a massive traction zone as well. You really have to get the car stopped, turned in, and kind of shoot yourself off the corner as well. And I don't think that Silverstone really has in comparison to other racetracks, properly slow corner. You've of course got the I'm going to forget the name of it now, but the corner that goes into Brooklands has the little straight of the DRS zone. It goes into Brooklands. Might be Village.
Is that Village?
God, that's going to be awful, isn't it? What terrible Silverstone knowledge I've got there. How awful, how embarrassing. But nonetheless, that's pretty much the slowest corner on the track. Otherwise, it's an incredibly fast-flowing racetrack, but also the temperature here is going to be lower. Whilst it will still be warm for England, for a Formula One racetrack, comparatively, it will be lower. So I do think this is going to open up the competition for the likes of Mercedes, who struggle in the very high heat, for Ferrari, who are rumoured to be bringing another upgrade to Silverstone, although we're not entirely sure if it's going to go on, but it'll be a new rear suspension if it does actually go on in time, and that could be quite interesting for this race. And of course, they brought upgrades to Austria, and it looks like they're really starting to understand the flow of the car and how it actually benefits them, because whilst the heat definitely helped them, they did feel leaps and bounds ahead of everyone else other than McLaren in that Austrian Grand Prix. So I think McLaren will be strong. They're strong everywhere. I don't think it's going to be a clear and obvious favourite.
Aintree. I was 2 corners short with
Aintree. Who cares?
Mr. Aintree cares. Will Max Verstappen be in the mix if Kimi Antonelli's not about?
Well, yes, stay well away, Max. Yes, I think he will be. And again, if there are cooler temperatures, I think this benefits Red Bull. I know we speak a lot about Mercedes, but Red Bull have struggled mostly this year where there are hotter conditions. So yeah, I think he will be. And then, as I've already mentioned, throw into the mix some mixed weather conditions, and Verstappen's right there as a favourite to win, not just be in the mix. So I think Verstappen will be right in there this weekend. We even saw last year when it wasn't his most competitive weekend, he still blanked a podium out of it, I think, didn't he? So
second place,
yeah.
That's more than a podium. So yeah,
is it?
It's more than a minimum podium.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, we know he's good around this circuit as well. So I, as always, count Max Verstappen out at your peril. Unless
I'm going to start doing a shot every time you say this line.
All right, count Max Verstappen out at your peril. What are you doing a shot of?
It's just a big mouthful of beer.
Oh, nice, mate. Yeah, unless Kimi Antonelli's about. But I think it'll be a struggle weekend for Verstappen and Red Bull.
Yeah, I think he could be in the mix. I would count him out of your peril. You know, Verstappen is a great driver.
You said it. You said you were going to do a shot every time I say. So what do you expect me and Ben to now do?
It was a figure. It's a figure of speech.
Oh.
Say something else.
He might be in the mix this weekend. It's been a tough 4 races for old Maxi Verstappen, because just 31 points in that time, which is the lowest of all of the top 6 in the championship, which isn't a position he usually finds himself in. Of course, that stat is heavily helped by one Kimi Antonelli last time out in Austria. But even so, it hasn't been an easy run for him. I think of all the drivers, he'll be the one that's absolutely praying for these mixed conditions and cooler conditions. We heard Christian Horner's description of what the McLarens were doing to one another at the Austrian GP, which I would rather not repeat. But his overall point was that they could just run the tires as they wanted, despite how close they were to one another. That, that the advantage of that starts to come down if and when the temperatures are slightly cooler this weekend. A stat that has already been said this evening, Lewis Hamilton is going for a 13th straight podium at Silverstone and a 10th win overall. Bad news for Lewis Hamilton. He hasn't had any podiums in 2025 so far, if you are talking about main races and not sprint races. And I have to clarify that every time. But anyway, Harry, can he add to the streak?
I'm going to be optimistic here and say yes, he can. I think there's going to have to be some good fortune involved. But I don't know. There's something about the British GP Silverstone that delivers topsy-turvy races. Again, a reference last year. I know Ferrari, we weren't really sure whether Ferrari's upgrades in Austria were actually good or just they were there. But they still got first and second, if you believe what they say. So
still funny.
The worst caption ever.
But the performance was definitely better than where they have been. So yeah, I think it's going to be a tough ask, but Hamilton is supreme around this circuit. Whether it's in mixed conditions, whether it's pulling a qualifying lap out the bag when it's most needed. We've seen some superb performances around Silverstone by Lewis Hamilton over the years, and that's why he's got so many podiums and why he could be on for a 10th win around here, which is quite frankly ridiculous. So it'll be tough, but I'm going to be optimistic and say he's in with a shot of continuing the streak.
Sam, we saw 4th place last time out for Lewis Hamilton in Austria, which matches his best of the season so far. Can he go at least one position better here and keep this streak alive?
It does feel like if it's ever going to come true, Silverstone is the place where it would happen for him. He's had some rather dramatic, some controversial, but plenty of race victories here at Silverstone. As you mentioned, he holds the record for the single most wins at any single racetrack. I think he has one more than his own joint record with Michael Schumacher, which he also has at Hungary, I think, for a lot of consecutive wins as well. I think he's got 7 there and then 8 here at Silverstone, which is amazing statistic. But, he's crossed the line here on 3 wheels. He has battled through some of the most severe rain we've ever seen in a racetrack. He is taking out Max Verstappen and throwing him into a wall at 200 miles an hour. There has been some real big moments for Lewis Hamilton at the Silverstone racetrack. And he is a pro at mastering these changeable conditions and the difficulties that Silverstone throws at you on many occasions that he's gone on to be successful here. It has been regularly both a dry and wet race. We've had changeable conditions on numerous occasions. He's also been very good at taking advantage of incidents elsewhere. You remember when Bottas and Vettel, I think, were in front of him, maybe 2018, and Giovinazzi crashed, and it meant that he was able to, under the safety car, pit, gets the lead, runs away with it. A little bit of fortune goes his way, but it's really in that situation that means that it opens up for him. I would be shocked if he went on to win this year, but a podium, if the car is as competitive as it was in Austria, and by that I mean it sits above the Mercedes, it sits above Max Verstappen, and if McLaren do scamper off, all he realistically has to do is beat his teammate. Now, that isn't the easiest task. Charles Leclerc is an absolute god. The man knows how to drive brilliantly. Even in that awful car, he seems to be able to pull out these brilliant performances. But if it can happen anywhere, it can happen at Silverstone. Lewis Hamilton has got that ability to do so. So, there's a reasonable chance that he goes one further and he picks up a podium. His first podium in a main feature race in the lovely red of Ferrari.
If you look at the last few years, It's not like Lewis Hamilton has had a huge amount of podium form coming into this race, and yet he finds something here. He does find something at Silverstone more often than not. If you look at 2022, he had 2 podiums out of the first 9 races. Race 10, Silverstone, finds a podium. 2023, 3 podiums in the first 9 races, gets to Silverstone and he finds one again. And then 2024, of course, last year, he only had 1 podium in his first 11 races. We get to round 12, which was Silverstone, and he gets the win. Interestingly, he's very similarly positioned in the championship this year compared to what he was in the Merc last year at the same stage. There's only 6 points in it. So even though you could look at how many points he's got this year, how many podiums he's got this year, and say he's got no chance whatsoever, I don't want to be that guy to be brave enough to say he's out of the contest here. He does have a task on his hands because Mercedes and Red Bull, let's just say they're out of contention. That's not a given. Let's say they're out of contention and we're at a similar spot to what we had last time in Austria. Then we get into that situation that you just described, Sam, where it might be 2 dominant McLarens and then a fight between 2 Ferraris to finish on the podium. Charles Leclerc, he's quite good, you know? He hasn't really been beaten much this year. And when I say much, I mean he's been beaten once, which was Imola, and even that was strategically driven. So he will need to do something that he struggled to do this year. But if he's going to do it anywhere, Silverstone seems to be the appropriate place to do it. Sam, in terms of the competitiveness of the team Ferrari at this point, they were a clear second best when we were in Austria. Do you think that will remain, or are we looking at a Mercedes recovery? Where do you think they stand?
It definitely feels as though both Mercedes and Max Verstappen are going to bounce back here at Silverstone. The conditions feel far more favourable. Although Silverstone can be a tyre-wear heavy track. I mean, we already mentioned the numerous punctures that we saw only a few years ago, of course, which culminating in Lewis Hamilton crossing the line with only 3 tyres. And it can be tough here. You can really wear those tyres down. And a lot of people do suggest that Silverstone is the closest thing that Formula One has to an oval racetrack. I think you're at full throttle for something ridiculous here, like 84% of the lap or something like that, which is razy at a racetrack in Formula One's terms. So where Mercedes are not great at hot tyres, Max Verstappen might thrive, for example. Ferrari are good in hot conditions. This might help the long term. Lewis Hamilton is famed for holding on to his tyres for much longer than many others around him. And we even heard the cries in Austria where the team desperately told him to come in, no coming, no coming. He wanted to stay out and carry on that set of hards. And I do have no doubt that he would have finished that race quite comfortably on that set of hards and done the 1 stop. So it's going to be quite strategic. I think there's going to be a lot of options in terms of do you 2 stop, do you 1 stop and try and push that tyre wear. And how does that come through for you? Safety cars also can be quite prominent here at Silverstone. You can have a lot of runoff. We can have a lot of side-by-side. So tactically, it's going to play together. But I do see the likes of George Russell and Max Verstappen, should they get away cleanly, being far, far more competitive and a much higher threat to Ferrari's chance of a podiums here than they were ever going to be at Austria.
Yeah, I agree that the conditions should help Mercedes get back into some form of contention here. Obviously, the grid penalty will hurt Kimi Antonelli a little bit, so qualifying will be even more important to make sure that 3-place penalty, the damage is minimized. But I just keep going back to the practice form that Mercedes showed at the Austrian GP when it was much cooler on that Friday versus what we saw, particularly on the Sunday, but even on the Saturday as well. They logged a lot of laps in FP2. They had I think the longest runs of anyone in terms of the race simulations, and they looked good. Russell was maybe a bit more consistent, whereas Antonelli was a bit quicker out the blocks. But in both instances, they did like 20 laps, consistent runs, and looked at that point that they were going to be on a par with Ferrari going into the rest of the weekend. And then obviously it completely fell away from there as the temperatures rose. We're not probably looking at the same situation here. I appreciate this might not be a wild statement, but if we had the supreme high of Canada and the supreme low of Austria, it will probably be somewhere in the middle of those two. Now, in fairness, there's a canyon in between those 2 results, but it will land, I think, somewhere in the middle of those. From Ferrari's perspective, I don't like admitting I'm wrong when it comes to Ferrari.
Ooh. Come on, you can do it.
I was a touch too harsh on Ferrari in the race review. because whilst it wasn't perfect, it was a step in the right direction. And if you look at Leclerc being 19 seconds back over the course of 70 laps, that's a quarter of a second. It's not too bad. So might depend on whether we get that suspension this weekend or, I don't know, probably Brazil, knowing Ferrari.
I thought I read it was Spa today. I thought I saw that somewhere. But anyway.
It'll be there by Abu Dhabi then. Then maybe they could be the second favourite once more. Harry, what do you think?
Yeah, it's like I said, it's going to be an interesting weekend for Ferrari because I still maintain that, yes, I think it was an improvement for them in Austria, but it's tough to know where those upgrades landed them versus everyone else because there wasn't really any competition in the race. I think they'll be further forward than they have been previously. So I expect them to be somewhere in the mix. And we say Lewis Hamilton's a Silverstone specialist, and he is. Charles Leclerc goes really well around here.
He does.
The results don't show it, but he's really good around here.
2020, he was dragging an absolute tire.
Exactly. So, and arguably 2022, he should have won had Ferrari decided they only wanted to pit one of their cars. So yeah, they've got two drivers there who know their way around this track very well. And for Mercedes, I maintain, I think they will be back in the fight this weekend. It's something about cooler conditions, Canada aside, when it's hot with softer tires, but clearly in cooler conditions they go better. And the upside for Mercedes on that is the next two races could be good for them because Spa tends to be pretty cool as well, and they won that one last year. Mercedes, and then
they should just go to their summer break. Don't do Hungary.
Don't do Hungary. Forget about Hungary. But the next two should be quite good for them. So yeah, I think, like I said, I think that both teams should be further in the mix this weekend.
All right, let's do it, chaps. Bold prediction time.
Gather around, little children, and listen to my song about my F1 bold predictions and how they'll all be wrong.
But Live Laugh Latifi, they weren't all wrong last time out in Austria. In fact, there were more right than wrong. I was by myself in the wrong corner. Harry, you managed to get on the board first point of the year. You're going back to back, son. What are you going back to back with?
Speaking of back to back, I'm control C and control Ving what I said this time last year. So Lewis Hamilton win.
It worked for you. Not an audience this time, so maybe that's the
trick. It's actually a bit of a letdown. Oh no. We can have the same. That's okay.
Nah, that's not bold.
That's not how it works.
It can't be bold if someone else thinks of it. So you're going with a Lewis Hamilton victory. My bold prediction is that we get a bit of a Williams recovery. I think they will score between them at least 14 points this weekend.
Not unless I take them out of my fantasy, they won't.
Oh, yeah.
Since I've done that, they basically scored no points.
Yeah. I'm still annoyed I brought in Carlos Sainz. Hey, we'll discuss F1 fantasy a little bit later on, but I'm going to go with Williams, at least 14 points between them. Sam, you've obviously got an original idea, which is...
Crofty will try and recreate in some way or another the through goes Hamilton line.
Hey, Crofty tries to do that every single waking minute of his life.
Let's see if it comes true. I've thought that on the fly, folks. So
what was
through goes my bold prediction? Because Harry's just nicked it.
What was the one he tried to do on last year? Was it this year? I can't remember, but he tried it, but it was pathetic and it didn't work.
Oh, it was.
He had to like, stop himself halfway through because it was so obviously not coming
through. Through goes Hamilton.
Yeah. Oh, he's actually caught up behind
and approaching is Lewis.
Anyway, I think he's going to try and force it in somewhere.
Oh, God.
Wow. Okay.
Right.
I didn't even think about that.
No, that was clear. Pole 1, 2, 3. Harry, what have we got?
Pole position, I'm going to go for Lando Norris. The win, obviously, Lewis Hamilton. Second place, Lando Norris. And third, George Russell.
Oh my God, the British bias!
Come on.
Balance out a bit. Pole Piastri, win Piastri, second Norris, third Verstappen. Sam.
Pole Piastri, wing Piastri, second Leclerc, third Verstappen.
Sam's fully uncommitted to his pole prediction. Just go on and cut clean.
Screw the Brits. No bias here.
And through goes the rest of the world.
Yeah, I'm with them. That's me squeaking at the end.
Yeah.